Good evening, everyone. My name is Maurice Sweeney. I'm the Chief Equity Officer here in Chicago Public Schools. Thank you for joining us this evening. I was hoping that the day would turn sunny, and Ada told me it's Chicago, it might. And so here we are with some sunshine outside. I hope it's sunny in your heart as well. Welcome to this beautiful session where we have really been working on how do we share the right information with our community around our capital improvement process. Next slide. So I am thankful and grateful. This is my 20th year in public education. I was just thinking about my favorite teachers and how they put me in the Future Teachers Club in 1993. So that tells you probably how old I am. But I am so appreciative of just the way that they nurtured and inspired me to be who I am today. So if you're a teacher watching, thank you for all of your deep commitments to young people. We have a few objectives for the day. The first is just to recap our capital planning process and budget. We just want to talk to you about what we do, how we prioritize, and how do we spend the money that we receive for capital budgets. We want to continue to build the CPS community's understanding about, what is the capital process like? How do we make prioritization decisions using our equity index and also our facilities index? So we want to talk about that. And then last, give you an opportunity to ask us some questions. Some questions were pre-submitted, so we will review those if you submitted a question. And if you haven't, you'll be able to ask us in the survey and to give some additional inputs. Two things I want you to keep in mind. Two sort of anchor questions about that'll come up in the survey is like, what's important for you and your community? Think really about like, what does a school improvement facility look like? Like, what would that mean? Director Vinny Dye is going to share some examples of what that means. She's going to express, just what the categories are, and that'll help to jog some of our memory around that. And then lastly, we just want to continue to think about how do we continuously engage people in the process. And when we get to the end, I'll explain a few things to you. So here's the all-star cast. Adrian Seguda, he's our Deputy Chief of Family and Community Engagement. That's me, Maurice, with the collar. Vinny Dye with the hoop earrings. She's one of our great leaders here in CPS. Ivan Hansen with the bright smile, and Ada Gomero also with the bright smile. So we are excited to just be here with you all, and thank you for joining us. As we were preparing for this session, we did this last year and we decided to do it again. We got together with a group of people who are representative in name and an icon on this slide to just say, are we putting the right information in front of the right people? So they gave us some feedback. We tweaked our presentation to be very concise and thoughtful and to be responsive into what we know people would ask about the process. In our CPS 5-year vision, which is now 2 years old, we made an even deeper commitment to integrity. We want to make sure that we have deep public trust between the district and the stakeholders in the city of Chicago, especially students, families, and caregivers. And we want to make sure that we are listening to your feedback and taking that into account as we continue to revise our processes here in Chicago Public Schools. Soon after we release our CPS equity framework, and in the vision and in the framework, that definition for equity is the same. Essentially, we're saying we will get behind our young people and provide the necessary resources and opportunities for them to thrive. So our approach to equity is centered around this little squiggly line in the back of this image. You might not be able to see it, but it's targeting universalism. You can find the equity framework at equity.cps.edu. But targeting universalism says it is important that we get all of our students within the district to the highest goal, meaning that we're not going to lower our expectations for anyone, but we will rise to the occasion in how we serve them. So for us, that means we have to do what those pastel colors are asking us to do. Liberatory thinking is about our mindsets. Inclusive partnerships are about who we invite to the table, especially prioritizing those most impacted. Resource equity says, where are my resources now? Where do they need to be? How do we need to draw in more resources to support? And then fair policies and systems. How do we ensure that policies don't benefit some and burden others? And with that equity lens, we're able to see the system and do great work. When we talk about inclusive partnerships, there are sort of 3 ways we're anchoring this conversation. We want to make sure that we're spending time listening. So those questions are really important. We're about to inform you with a lot of information. And in the survey, you'll have an opportunity to consult. And essentially, the survey will ask you a series of questions about who you are, where you live, what schools do your students or families or caregivers, which schools are they associated with? And then we ask you more questions around the information that we're going to share shortly. That survey is so important. Please complete it. Share it with people you know, because we will collect that data and make better sense of that data. And eventually we will publish online. Just a little recap about the funding. Where does CPS get its money? About 50% comes from the local tax dollars. About 18% comes from the federal government, and the rest, about 30%, comes from the state. You can see on the other sort of rectangle, we do pay our pension debt because we want to make sure the teachers that we're celebrating this week during Teachers Appreciation Week and others who have invested their careers in Chicago public schools are taken care of. That's important. On the opposite end of that, most of the money that's in the district goes directly to schools. And in that little middle orange area is where folks like me and the team who are here with us get the pay and the resources we need to do this right work for the youth in Chicago. So with that, I will just sort of think about, I want to share with you sort of where we have been from January and where we're going. And I'm actually going to recap this at the end. We sat around, equity, capital, and portfolio team sat around and said, what do we need to do to live up to our CPS 5-year vision? We came up with this presentation as a way of getting early input and insights into how we make decisions. And tonight we're here with you in this green space on this graph to just continue to engage in that conversation and give you an opportunity to ask us some questions. Then we take the information back, we look at what the survey says, and we use the equity index and the facilities prioritization index to help us figure out how we spend the money we have. We go to the board, we come back to public hearings. These are not the public hearings. We will have public hearings, and then we go up for board approval. I'll say this all over again, but for now, I will pass it over to our Executive Director, Ivan Hansen, to share with us more about the capital planning process, and then he'll invite Ada Gomero and Vinny Dye to share more information. Ivan?
Thank you, Dr. Sweeney, and thank you all for taking the time to join us today. We are here in an effort to increase transparency in the capital planning process. And this is a work in progress, and we know it's not perfect, but CPS is committed to building on this process. Our primary goals today are to recap the FY21 capital plan, to provide information and build a deeper understanding about our capital planning process, to seek input from you and the community on capital budget priorities and how CPS can continue to improve community engagement. And our topics for discussion today are the CPS building portfolio, understanding CPS budgets, capital planning approach, the equity index factors, and capital budget categories. There will also be a survey link provided at the end of the presentation, which we encourage you all to participate in. The CPS portfolio is large, and the average facility is 81 years old. Our oldest facility is 147. We maintain over 62 million square feet. And to put that in perspective, that'd be the equivalent of 14 Sears Towers. Many years of budgetary constraints has led to a large backlog of deferred needs. The total district need is over $3 billion, and that is just to bring all facilities to a state of good repair. The cost to repair CPS buildings has far exceeded what CPS has historically been able to afford. Because of this, prioritization of capital needs is critical, and CPS needs and values your input in this process. CPS budgets are classified into three types: capital, operating, and debt. Operating is the day-to-day school operations to pay personnel costs such as salaries, benefits, and non-personnel costs such as food, cleaning, utilities, instructional supplies, building supplies, and software. Debt are the funds allocated to make annual payments on our bonds and other debt payments. Capital, what we will be discussing today, represents the amount of funds allocated for long-term investments in our school facilities, including building construction and renovations, and infrastructure-based technology like high-speed internet. Again, today we are focusing on the capital budget. The question has continually come up on the difference between capital and operating funds. Capital, managed by us, the Planning and Capital Department, are projects that include major renovations such as roof replacements or major interior renovations and have long-term ranging durations from a few months to years. Operating and maintenance is managed by the CPS Facilities Department, which is separate from the Capital Department. And these projects and services include custodial, landscaping, snow removal, and basic facility upkeep. And their durations can go from a few hours to only a few days. Since CPS cannot afford to fund all deferred maintenance needs and repairs through the capital program, CPS buildings are still maintained through the facilities team. There's a very close collaboration between CPS capital and facilities departments to address all building needs and meet weekly. During this presentation, we are focusing on the capital portion of the CPS budget. We are talking about the difference between repairs that could cost thousands versus replacements that could cost millions of dollars. An example would be an air conditioning. The facility department would be responsible for maintaining existing window air conditioning units and making all necessary repairs or replacements as required. Whereas the capital department would be responsible for replacing or upgrading the entire air conditioning system. Another example would be a roof. Roof repairs such as roof patching would be facilities, versus a full roof replacement would be us at capital. Here's a look at the capital budget over the past 6 fiscal years. And you can see the ebbs and flows, which makes developing a long-range capital plan extremely difficult. While the need continues to be significant and consistent, the funding varies on an annual basis. Remember, our facility need is over $3 billion, which exceeds our annual funding levels. This is why the prioritization process is extremely critical, and your input is not only welcome, but necessary. Over the next few slides, I will be recapping the FY21 capital budget categories. Many of these categories will remain for this year's capital plan. However, 2 items to note. We heard from the community and continue to prioritize critical needs that focus on keeping buildings warm, safe, and dry. This includes roof envelope needs, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing needs. And based on what we heard from the community during last year's capital planning process and outreach, bathroom and parking lots were 2 new categories added into the FY21 capital plan. In addition to these, CPS remains committed to investing in building accessibility programs and programmatic upgrades, including modernizing classrooms to provide a 21st century learning environment, site improvements such as new playgrounds and turf fields, and infrastructure for IT and safety and security. Vinny will be going into much more detail on many of these categories later in the presentation, including a few new priorities that CPS is considering for FY22. Also, similar to last year, CPS will be requesting your input via survey on the budget categories to help us prioritize critical capital needs across the portfolio. On the screen is a summary of the FY21 capital budget. Last year, the board approved the capital plan of $653 million. What is important to recognize is that although $653 million was approved, nearly $300 million was committed for priorities such as pre-K expansion and science labs upgrades. The remaining amount is prioritized for critical capital needs. I will now invite Ada back to speak on the equity index and how it informed that capital project selection and prioritization.
Thank you, Ivan. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Your feedback is so important and essential to making progress on resource equity for and with our CPS students and families. Like Ivan shared, some of the slides I'm going to walk through now may look familiar to you if you joined our community engagement spaces last year. So the equity index is a tool that we're designing together to be used for resource equity through project prioritization. And the index is composed of community factors to acknowledge that students interact with their school community, the surrounding community, and the community where they live. So we know that not all of our students go to their neighborhood school, so really trying to take into account this holistic context of the systems and communities that they experience in their lives. Or that they are a part of in their lives. The index also takes into account demographic factors and historical investment factors. The factors highlighted here will remain in the version for this current budget year to allow us to track progress on resource equity over time. We need to hear from you on whether these align with your priorities to help us determine the weighting of the data and whether new factors are needed. So it's very important to provide your feedback through the survey that we will mention multiple times here, but please provide your feedback via this survey link that we will share soon. So we just wanted to make a note here. You'll see on the bottom left, there is a dashed box in blue highlighting this indicator of students experiencing homelessness. So based on your feedback last year, we added this indicator. So we heard from you that we needed to prioritize the critical needs of this student group to recognize school communities that are experiencing the largest opportunity gaps so we can respond to that critical need with adequate resources. Next slide, please. So I'll just delve a little bit deeper into the specific indicators and data that compose the tool, the index tool. So here are the community factors. The first of which is the hardship index score, and the hardship index score is a value that is determined at the Chicago community area level. And so this figure represents the level of opportunity gaps or hardship at that Chicago community level. So what we've done with this tool is we've taken that data and we've rolled it up to the school level. Similarly, for the factor of students residing in Invest Southwest areas. Invest Southwest areas are areas that the city has prioritized for resource flow, investment flow to address historical disinvestment. So we are looking at where students live, rolling that up to where they go to school to take into account whether the communities that they live in are experiencing greater hardship and have larger critical need. As a quality of life factor, we are also including community life expectancy. We know that community life expectancy actually differs between different community areas. And this is one of the holistic quality of life indicators that we are embedding into the index tool, and as well as the students experiencing homelessness indicator that I mentioned before. Here are just a few more indicators with the descriptions. So we are taking into account the racial and ethnic composition of our schools, what percent of our students are experiencing economic disadvantage, what percent of our students are learning English, to make sure we're providing them with the supports in order to make sure that they are succeeding. And our students who are students with individualized education plans, so our students in special education, also looking at what percent of students have individualized education plans to be able to make resource equity recommendations and decisions based on that data, as well as historical funding data. So in the case of capital funding, going back 10 years, and in the case of TIF funding, going back 20 years. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so here we just wanted to highlight one example of how your feedback is leading to change and decisions based on inclusive partnerships and for equity. So here on the right here is a map of the fiscal year 21 capital projects overlaid against the UIC hardship index score. So the hardship index score is this Chicago community level score that I highlighted before. So you'll see here on the legend in the bottom, the higher the score, the darker the blue, the higher the opportunity gaps or hardship. And what you can see here in terms of where the projects are situated, represented by these dots that are different colors, is that in fiscal year 21, CPS utilized the equity index tool that we've been describing to prioritize projects across the city. So you can see here that the projects that were prioritized are aligned with areas of hardship based on that data. And also these were recommendations that were made based on your feedback from the survey that you completed last year. So I will now turn it back over to our Executive Director of Capital Planning and Construction, Ivan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ada. Our capital planning approach is outlined here, but it's important to note that the annual capital plan is based on available funding. As you saw in an earlier slide, this can vary greatly from year to year, which makes planning difficult. Our building needs are based on the most recent facility condition assessment, which was completed this year and will be available on cps.edu later this month. CPS's portfolio is very large and the backlog of building needs is significant. This, coupled with continued budget constraints, necessitates a needs-based prioritization approach focusing on a priority capital needs and keeping buildings warm, safe, and dry. We must maintain a data-driven approach that allows for an equitable allocation of capital funds while also aligning with the district's educational goals and initiatives. In FY21, we have made enhancements to this process, and we will continue to do so in FY22. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to capital planning, and we understand that the current process isn't perfect. However, CPS is committed to improving this process continuously and incorporating public feedback like these meetings today. Our approach this year follows the FY21 methodology for capital budget categories, but we are also making several process enhancements. Most notably, this year's process includes data from the updated facility assessments. We also remain committed to increasing transparency and public outreach, and we continue to work with Dr. Sweeney's group, who guides us to increase community engagement in the overall capital planning process, and today is a direct result of this partnership. We encourage everyone today to participate in the survey after the presentation to provide additional feedback and suggestions. We have recently completed a new round of facility condition assessments in all CPS owned and operated facilities. The previous facility condition assessment was completed in 2015. I would like to note a few highlights on the facilities condition assessments. These are visual inspections only of the building systems. It is not destructive. The sample report you see here includes rank and quantity for all assessed items at each CPS operated facility. A separate assessment landing page on cps.edu will be out later this month. The prioritization of critical capital needs is a process as systems are dynamic and constantly changing. For example, systems can change significantly from one assessment to another. This can be driven by a number of factors, including weather, accelerated deterioration, deferred maintenance, and recent investments. I will now turn it over to Vinny to go into more detail on the budget categories for FY22. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. Shown here are the 10 proposed priority capital budget categories that CPS is reviewing for the FY22 capital plan. Many of the budget priority categories from FY21 will remain for FY22. Based on additional public feedback we received and internal discussions, we are proposing to add 2 more categories to the FY22 capital planning process. And those are the 2 on the bottom right of the screen. These 2 categories include student recreation and athletic resources, which covers existing natatorium, stadiums, and athletic fields, and our modular refurbishment program, which would renovate, replace, or remove existing modular buildings across our current portfolio. Public feedback is critical to this process, and we are requesting your input on informing the prioritization of these capital budget categories today, again, via that survey that you've heard about so many times at cps.edu/capital survey 2021. In this section of the presentation, we'll take a few minutes to walk you through and explain each of these categories. We'll provide some high-level examples of the type of improvements these are, the scope and schedule, and then highlight some of the impacts to students within each budget category, and share some photos with you, as we truly believe a picture can speak 1,000 words. This category, ADA investment strategy. We wanted to separate this from the others before we dive into the other budget categories, because we wanted to highlight that accessibility remains a critical capital priority to CPS. And continuing in FY22, CPS is continuing to support the long-range initiative to make all CPS campuses more accessible. This includes working closely with the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities to develop a long-term ADA capital investment strategy. This is an investment that will spend $100 million over a 5-year period. At a minimum, this investment would create an accessible route from the parking lot to the main floor of the main campus, and improvements could include an accessible parking, entrance, or route from the entrance to the first floor, as well as an accessibility to the main office. In addition, it could include accessible restrooms, and one set of boys and girls, and then one gender neutral toilet. This next category, roof and envelopes. This includes roof, exterior masonry, windows, all of these things directly affecting our ability to provide warm, safe, and dry facilities to our students, staff, and community. Water infiltration leading to these types of needs can come from roofs and/or windows past their useful life, damage to masonry from the many freeze-thaw cycles we experience here in the Chicago area, as you can see in the top right picture. These type of projects are generally large and complex and are phased over 1 to 2 years, with the bulk of the exterior and the interior work completed over summer breaks. Due to budget constraints, we are not able to address every roof envelope need in the district. However, we are continuously working with the facilities team to repair and/or stabilize these issues until they can be renovated or replaced, so as to minimize the impact on our students and staff in the classroom. The next category, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing needs. These systems control our indoor environment and focus on core mechanical systems, essentially heating and cooling the buildings and associated electrical and plumbing infrastructure. With an average building age of 80, a lot of this infrastructure is original to the buildings. If one or more of these systems or equipment is obsolete and not working, it can cause potential air quality issues for the building, which comes at a risk of impacting the health and wellness of our students and staff. Each building system presents its own set of challenges when we're planning an upgrade or replacement, with projects taking up to 2 years to complete. However, fixing these systems helps us to provide learning environments that are safe, healthy, and comfortable for our students and staff. Before we go any further to the next categories, I want to address something that I'm sure is on everyone's mind. What about the inside of my school, my classroom, or my office? Interior finishes such as painting of walls, repairing floors is not listed as its own dedicated category. However, these are often addressed as part of larger capital projects. For example, doing a roof or window replacement project, finishes that were damaged by water infiltration would be repaired and funded as part of the larger capital project. On some projects, this may include replacing all of the finishes in an entire classroom, the corridors. Each school's needs are different and are evaluated at the time of the project. We know that interior finishes are important and provide a sense of pride in our schools for our students, staff, and community. Next category. This category is new in the FY21 budget as a direct result of the community engagement process from last year. We asked the question, and based on the feedback, as you saw earlier, there were over 700 surveys, and based on the feedback, we included this in the FY21 budget, and we are proposing to continue this in the FY22 budget. Currently, day-to-day repairs for use and functionality in our restrooms are performed by the facilities department on an ongoing basis. The capital department will complete major bathroom renovations as emergency repairs or as building accessibility code-driven modification on larger capital projects. CPS has over 5,000 restrooms. This is a subject that we hear a lot about from our local school representation, such as the principals, the engineers, the staff, as well as the student. This category goes beyond basic repairs to renovations that will provide hands-free faucets, automatic soap dispensers, or toilets with motion detectors to help improve sanitation. And hand in hand with the sanitation would be upgrades for safety. Renovation could include features like enhanced hands-free lighting or open entryway, tamper-resistant fixtures, and graffiti-resistant stall partitions. Another benefit would be conservation. Low flow and pressure assisted toilets reduce water usage and alleviate plumbing backups. Renovations like these would provide additional benefits, including much needed upgrades to our infrastructure, like our plumbing, our piping, our lighting. And in addition, it would include the wall prep and painting and floor replacement, as well as accessibility in these spaces. The restrooms in our schools make a statement to our students and staff. Improving their appearance can have a positive impact on student behavior and faculty morale. Again, although we perform minor bathroom modifications and accommodations as part of many capital renovations, they are rarely at the scale of a gut rehab or full modernization. And so this category was a multi-year program that focused only on renovating restrooms. And so again, as a result of last year's community engagement, this was added in the FY21 budget, and we're proposing to continue this in the FY22 budget. The next category is programmatic investments. Programmatic investments are made to modernize classrooms to provide 21st century learning environments. Since 2011, the district has focused on strengthening neighborhood schools with high quality academic programming. Our academic program focus requests for proposals, or the RFP process, as many of you know it, is where schools can submit proposals requesting the addition of specific academic programs to their school. And so the district seeks to maintain its integrity and decision-making on these programs and provide even greater transparency and clarity in how academic programs are added to schools and improve the equity of access to high-quality academic programming across the district. This process is managed by the Office of Innovation and Incubation. Projects in this category could include renovated classrooms to support various district-led initiatives like the pre-K expansion or arts program, STEM, STEAM, IB, to name a few. The next category is overcrowding relief. The district's overall building utilization average is nearly 70%. So this category acknowledges that there are occasionally some buildings within the district that cannot efficiently serve their enrolled population, and they require relief by way of new capacity or capacity expansion. And depending on the need, this could include interior renovations to the existing school, lease space build out, new addition, or new modular, and in some cases, a new school. The next category is IT and security investments. With regards to IT category for today, we are focusing on the IT in our facilities, specifically to improve internet connectivity by building and repairing network infrastructure in our facilities across the district. The safety and security team seek to support students at every school and provide safe learning environments. Funds are allocated for new security equipment, including cameras, intercoms, phones, alarm systems, and modernized screening equipment. These next few categories focus on exterior site improvements. These usually take about 6 months to a year to complete. This one being playground renovations. The primary focus for playground upgrades include ensuring that the student and community users have a safe play area. These improvements can include new equipment, including new accessible surface, so no longer having the wood chips, as you see there on the top left picture. It could include building new playgrounds for 2 to 5-year-olds or 5 to 12-year-olds. And although the facilities and the capital team continue to repair and maintain our existing playgrounds, there are still some cases when playgrounds are outdated or have exceeded their useful life and require full replacement. On some of these projects, CPS partners with the Department of Water Management and the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. And this has been a good partnership where CPS gets the benefit of supplemental funding, a new outdoor space, and the community benefits from additional stormwater retention due to projects like these. The next category is parking lot repairs or replacements. If you've driven or walked through some of our parking lots, no doubt you have seen the need for parking lot repairs and or replacements. Currently, parking lot repairs are primarily addressed either by the facilities department for day-to-day maintenance or emergency issues, or as building and accessibility code-driven modification as part of our larger capital projects. As a result of the community engagement from last year, this category was added as its own priority for the FY21 plan. It goes beyond minor repairs. And you may ask, why does it need its own category? Well, it's because major parking lot renovations and or replacements are large improvements to the site that include code compliance with ordinances for landscaping and stormwater retention, to name a few. And these often come at a very high cost. So based on public feedback, again, we initiated this program last year and we seek to continue it in the FY22 capital plan. So now we get into the two new categories that we would like your input on. This one is the student recreation and athletic resources. So we're seeking to prioritize this as its own budget category. And when we talk about student recreation and athletic resources, we are alluding to stadiums, athletic fields, and our natatoriums or swimming pools and related facilities. For reference, CPS owns 7 stadiums throughout the city. They are Eckersall, Gately, Hanson, Lane, Rockney, Stagg, and Winnemac stadiums. Fall sports at these stadiums include football and boys soccer. Spring sport includes girls soccer, track and field, and lacrosse. No doubt many of you, myself included, have fond memories of attending or participating in these type of events at our stadiums. Our natatoriums and related facilities range in size and are located in our elementary and high schools throughout the district. Our current portfolio includes approximately 80 pools. Of these, there are several that are not operational or have been decommissioned. The non-operational pools range in need from minor repairs such as pool pumps or exhaust to requiring a full major gut rehab, as you can see in some of the pictures. These pools are used by the students in our schools and their aquatic teams, the Chicago Park District, and various other CPS partners for educational, competitive, and recreational events. CPS operates various stadiums and athletic fields throughout the district, and in a typical school year, these stadiums hold over 600 athletic events attended by over 16,000 CPS students, as well as spectator participants. In addition to the regular scheduled CPS event, these stadiums also serve as hosts to Chicago Public League competitions, as well as the Illinois High School Association events such as playoffs and tournaments. Fully functional athletic resources such as stadiums, athletic fields, and natatoriums or pools provide CPS students with resources that support physical health and wellness, and this can have a significant impact on the students' abilities to achieve academic success. Upgrading these antiquated facilities is a priority of CPS beyond just routine repair and maintenance. And this core category will provide renovation to student locker rooms, public restrooms, our existing running track and athletic fields. It would also include updating those fields to more sustainable material, renovating or repairing our pools and natatoriums, the spectator seating in these locations, as well as concession stands. These renovations would also include much needed infrastructure upgrades to our mechanical systems, plumbing and piping, as well as our interior and exterior lighting and structural needs and finishes, as you can see in the top left picture here. One example of how CPS is prioritizing investments in student recreational facilities is seen in the anticipated Eckersall Stadium project renovation. This project is scheduled to be bid out in the fall of this year, with construction beginning in 2022. With your input, we seek to do much more. So we're proposing this as a category for the FY22 budget. And again, we seek your feedback on the survey. The next category that's a new potential category for FY22 is the Modular Refurbishment Program. And so what do we mean when we say modular? Well, modular buildings are commonly built on a fixed foundation with walls, roofs, flooring, typically constructed off-site and assembled on delivery. Because of this, modular buildings can sometimes be moved or transported either as a unit or in sections. Modular buildings are seen in various sizes, but the most common sizes for these are 2, 4, 6, or even some 8 classroom modulars. In recent years, CPS has been working with various vendors to identify more sustainable and more permanent material solutions for the construction of these type of facilities. Currently, CPS has modular buildings at nearly 60 campuses that house approximately 350 classrooms. Over the years, modular buildings have been added across the district to address various issues, including relieving overcrowding by providing additional classroom space where there's a shortage, driver's ed facilities, and more recently to support this initiative, the pre-K expansion initiative. And in coordination with schools, chief of schools, and the Office of Portfolio, our proposed strategy would include a campus by campus analysis to review how schools are utilizing the modular buildings. We would review each campus for the following potential actions. So we assessing the age and condition of all of the existing systems in these buildings, the roof, the walls, the flooring, the finishes, the HVAC for each modular, and then developing a list of repairs that would be required, if any, to bring these buildings up to a state of good condition. Or alternatively, based on the age and the condition and need, evaluate if the modular should be replaced or potentially removed entirely from the site. I know that was a lot of information that I just shared with you, so I really appreciate your attention this afternoon. These are the 10 categories that we are seeking feedback on via the survey, again at cps.edu/capital survey 2021. The survey that you take will help inform our final categories for the FY22 plan. Thank you again so much for your participation, and I'll turn it back over to Ada.
Thank you, Venny. So we've been receiving some questions here via the Q&A in the chat, and we also have been receiving questions from the previous sessions, and we want to share that information here. But before we get to those, I just want to insert here another reminder to please take the survey at cps.edu/capital survey 2021. Like we've been sharing with you, we use this data that you provide us through this survey to respond to specific questions, but also to inform the recommendations and decision-making on resource equity for this plan, for this year's plan. So one other note is that if you have any campus-specific comments or concerns, please also be sure to include those in the survey, identifying the school. that will allow us to follow up with a response. So now we can jump into the questions we've been receiving. The first two questions are a little bit similar, so I'll ask them together. The first question is, how much money is CPS expecting for the fiscal year 22 capital budget? And the second question is, how much would be the fiscal year 22 ADA capital improvement budget?
Thank you, Ada. I'll take that. So the FY22 capital plan is intended to continue to build on the multi-year $758 million investment, including outside funding, made in the FY21 capital plan. CPS intends to target an investment of about $550 million for the FY22 capital plan. In regards to the ADA, we are slated $20 million to be assigned as part of the district's $100 million 5-year commitment to accessibility.
Thank you. Next question is, how does the district prioritize projects?
So I'll take that one, Ada. Well, CPS has historically prioritized projects based on building needs. And these needs are based on the facility assessments, of which we just completed the recent facility assessments of 2019-2020, which will be posted later on their own landing page on cps.edu later this month for each school. So we use the facility condition assessment along with the equity index to prioritize projects. In addition, we look at other reports, technical reports that we receive. Again, we work closely with facilities, our boots on the ground, who are indicating the condition of the buildings, and then the list is prioritized. So the two factors would be the equity index and the facility assessment, along with our informed information from the field. And these factors, in alignment with the district's academic initiatives and available funding, drive the project prioritization.
Thank you. Let's see here. This is another question from a previous session. We keep mentioning the survey. The question here is, will the results from the feedback or survey be shared publicly?
I'll take that. So yes, based on the public input received from these surveys and alignment with the district's academic initiatives and available funding, we'll develop a list of projects recommended for the FY22 capital plan, and then conduct the public hearings on those as accordingly, and that information, along with the feedback from the survey, will be posted on the website.
Excellent, thank you. Next question is related to charter schools. The question is, will charter schools be a part of the fiscal year 22 capital plan?
Yes, they will. No matter if it's a charter, a contract, or a CPS district operated school, any of the critical needs of a CPS owned or leased facility will be considered to be part of the overall capital prioritization process.
Thank you, Ivan. This next question, I believe, is for you, Dr. Sweeney. So are charter, public schools, and CPS-owned buildings awarded an equity index score?
Yes, thank you, Ada. All CPS schools have an equity index score.
Excellent. Next question. Is there a public-facing document or database we can access to see the accessibility status of each school and the district's accessibility projects?
The accessibility status for each school is posted on cps.edu, so it's on our website. And then as far as the status, what was the question? Our projects, the different projects that we would do. We work closely with the mayor's office for people with disabilities to develop long-term ADA capital investment strategy. And as was mentioned earlier, we're committed to spending this $100 million to improve accessibility over a 5-year period. Projects are prioritized based on need and also based on the equity index.
Perfect. Another push there for the survey data and how important it is. The next question is, what about building finishes?
So as we talked about earlier, interior finishes such as painting of walls, repairing floors, although not listed as their own dedicated category, are often included as part of larger capital projects. For example, again, if we're doing a roof or window replacement, any finishes that were damaged as a result of water infiltration would be repaired and funded as part of that larger project.
Thank you. The next question is, what is the CPS 5-year capital plan?
I'll take that one. The 5-year capital plan strategy is, as it is outlined in the EFMP. That's the Educational Facilities Master Plan, and that can also be found on the cps.edu. While the focus is expected to continue to address the warm, safe, and dry, the long-term strategy will focus on the capital need priorities as informed based on the current public feedback, and the available capital funding is a key driver in that.
Thank you. This next question is from an earlier session, and it says, my alderman says that a new school building cannot be constructed in our neighborhood without TIF funds. Is that the case?
So as you saw in the presentation, CPS has a significant backlog of critical needs, and funding is always a key driver of the capital budgets. So we are always looking for alternate sources of funding. For an example, we've pursued state, federal, local TIF funding. We also partner with other city agencies such as the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District and the Water Management to find alternate funding. So alternate funding is not only welcome, but it's needed.
Excellent. Next question. The next question that we have is about timeline. So how soon will renovations begin, and will it only be certain schools or all CPS buildings?
So I'll take that one. So once the capital budget is approved, typically designs for approved projects would start in the fall, and then the projects are bid in the following spring, and construction starts in the spring or late spring or in summer for projects that are approved in the capital budgets. So the only schools that would receive a capital investment will be those with approved projects for the budget.
Got it. Thank you. So there's also a question about needing additional space for a specific campus.
That's why we have the survey. Please fill out the survey. Any specific questions or concerns about campuses, we need to do that in the survey, and we do sort through those, and they will be acknowledged.
Thanks, Ivan. So this next question reads, how do local contractors and tradesmen participate in the contracts awards?
So Ada, CPS has various vendors that are selected through a public solicitation process. Capital construction primarily uses union labor. And so local contractors are encouraged to get into the CPS vendor pool and bid on capital projects. CPS is focused on growing our M and WB participation in our capital program, and we host various programs throughout the year to encourage that participation. So I would encourage anyone interested to visit our website at www.cps.edu/procurement for more information on how to get involved into these pools. And as a note, both pools will have solicitations out at some point this summer, both our major pools for construction, which would be our various trades on the facility side and the general contractor on the capital side. So both of those will have solicitations this summer. So again, if they visit cps.edu/procurement to look for those when they come out.
Great, thank you, Vinny. We just give maybe 20-30 seconds in case there are any other questions surfacing for anyone. And you can feel free to share those in the chat or via the Q&A function in your Zoom window, the bar on the bottom, if you click Q&A to share your questions. So we'll give maybe just a little bit of time to see if there are any other questions surfacing for anyone.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We've said this, 15, 20 times, the survey, the survey, the survey. So don't forget to complete that. Some of the next steps include us going back, looking at the survey data once the survey closes, I think on May 21st. We'll take that data, we'll review it, we'll make sense of it, and then prepare our capital budget. And that will go to the board for review. We will also have public hearings when it's made public, and then we will get to a final vote. So know that, once again, these are not the budget hearing sessions. This is really just to get more stakeholder involvement. So please share the survey, put it on Twitter, take a picture of this if you don't have a moment to write it down, but definitely complete the survey. And so with that, I say on behalf of Chicago Public Schools, thank you. And if you're able to join Dr. Jackson and the mayor for a town hall meeting that's happening about 2 minutes after this, please join us. A lot of important information there. Thank you all for your time. Have a great evening.